then other people think they're realists, cynics, so they say it's physical brute force. And there's a word in Sanskrit, danda, it means the stick. Kautilya, and I'm almost quoting, Kautilya, I've really thought this very profoundly, and no one in history before me has really figured this out. The underlying principle of society and for the state, and for which the king and the government has to focus on as the first principle, is the acquisition and management of material wealth.
Então, foi dito que o principal, o subjacente elemento da administração da sociedade é a riqueza material.
And he says, well, let me give you some examples to show how I'm right. If you have hunger in the country, the priests turn out to be thieves and even cannibals.
Então, por exemplo, se houver falta de comida na sociedade, os próprios padres podem ficar muito agressivos e virar canibais.
Os padres se viram canibais e ladrões.
E também ladrões.
And then he says, well, and then you can have an 80-year-old woman or a 10-year-old child, but if they have lots of money and wealth, they can hire the meanest mercenaries and the meanest warriors and gangsters in the country and dominate the country. An 80-year-old blind widow or woman or a 10-year-old child, if they have money, material wealth, then they can pay for warriors and gangsters to dominate the country. So what this shows is that the fundamental principle is first having material wealth, because with that you can buy and do everything.
Então, outro exemplo é que se uma pessoa de 80 anos ou uma criança de 10 tiverem um dinheiro suficiente para pagar para os mercenários fazerem algum tipo de trabalho, eles terão essa capacidade de usar a riqueza material para algum benefício.
So then he describes in his book in great detail the organization of the state and how the king has to pay attention to the economy above everything else.
Então houve neste livro uma organização de como o rei tem que prestar atenção na riqueza material e como isso se dá.
And then he has a completely different view of human nature than Ashoka, because Ashoka actually is an optimist. He believes that people individually can change, and that this is the only lasting change. But Kautilya believes that you can't trust people and that they only respond to material incentives.
Bom, a diferença, portanto, entre o avô de Ashoka, que era Kautilya, era de que este avô dele não confiava na natural tendência benevolente do ser humano como Ashoka fazia. Kautilya acreditava que ele teria que estar de certa forma controlado pela riqueza material.
And so only material incentives or the threat of punishment or reward, this is the only way that can have any change in society, and that people are too weak otherwise. So Kautilya has a rather, some people would say realist, other people would say cynical or pessimistic view of human nature.
Então ele achava, Kautilya, este avô de Ashoka, achava que apenas pela ameaça, pela punição da falta destes elementos materiais, é que você poderia controlar a atitude humana. Ele não confiava no ser humano. No incentivo.
And actually, as I started reading Kautilya, I began to feel very uneasy, because it's actually quite fascinating, and he goes into great detail, so it makes for very interesting reading. And let me give you just two entertaining examples of his rather perverse but very modern view of human nature.
Então veja, quando o professor Rich começou a ler todo este tratado de Kautilya, ele ficou bastante interessado de ver como que essa forma perversa de entender a organização da sociedade poderia citar. Ele vai citar dois exemplos.
So Kautilya, for example, he says you can't trust anybody. So he has a whole section on a secret police. So you have to have the king and the state has to have a secret police spying on people. And he says there are two categories of people in society that are particularly important and useful to use as internal spies. One are prostitutes, and two are priests and holy men.
Então, este avô de Ashoka achava que como você não pode confiar nas pessoas, haveria necessidade da polícia secreta e que ela seria composta de dois tipos de pessoas que teriam perfil correto para serem os de polícia secreta, as prostitutas e os padres.
And of course he says that when people are with prostitutes, of course they trust them and will say things, intimate things, maybe about the king or the government. And of course when they go to priests, they trust the priests and will also say what they'll really think. So we have to put the priests and the prostitutes in the pay of the government and the secret police.
Então ele pensava efetivamente que quando você está com uma prostituta, você pode até partilhar coisas íntimas e também junto aos padres a quem você confia. Portanto, o imperador achava que tinha que ter essas pessoas a serviço do governo.
And then he has a whole section on law, on legal cases and this sort of thing. And in this section, it has a lot of rich detail. I mean, as lawyers, I've heard that this university has a very good law school. So the section on law is very entertaining, also very sophisticated. And there's one section where he talks about who should be suspects if you have the unexpected or unexplained death of a rich man.
Ok. Então, o professor Rich também enfatiza que neste tratado dele há bastante coisas relativas a leis, e assim como nessa faculdade deve ter muitas pessoas que estudam o assunto, vale a pena verificar, mas ele traz aqui uma pergunta: de quem se deveria suspeitar no caso da morte de uma pessoa rica?
Of a man or a rich man.
De homem.
And he says, well, of course it might be the servants.
Deveriam ser os empregados, claro.
But he says one should observe the behavior of the widow, of the wife, very closely.
Mas se deveria também observar muito de perto o comportamento da viúva.
Because if she makes a big show of being sad and of crying, well, you can, then she should be a suspect for murder. Because the wife of a rich man, if she shows that she's very unhappy and sad and crying, making a big display, then this is probably an act that she's putting in. So she should immediately go into the class of the suspects of the murder of the rich man.
Então, efetivamente, se ela estiver numa atitude exagerada de sofrimento e choro, ela tem que ser a primeira a ser suspeita, porque afinal de contas ela é a esposa de um homem rico, ela não tinha que estar assim chorando.
So he has an extremely cynical and entertaining view of human nature. He's also very concerned about corruption. He says that government officials are always going to try to steal, so we have to have constant controls and checks on corruption. And some people would argue this is also a very realistic view of human nature.
Naquela ocasião, então, ele já percebia que a corrupção é uma característica do governo, que eles sempre vão estar tentando levar um dinheiro que não é devido e que então essa é uma característica que também mostra que ele entendia esse aspecto da
Yeah. And he also has a whole section on foreign relations, on statecraft. And there he's also has a totally amoral realpolitik view of the world. He says, well, for the state, your neighbor is your natural enemy, and your natural ally is the neighbor of your neighbor.
Bom, ele tinha uma atitude cínica e bastante assim controvertida. Ele achava que, em termos de relações exteriores, ele considerava que o vizinho do seu estado é o seu inimigo, mas que o vizinho dele é o seu aliado, não é?
So this is to be the underlying principle of your foreign policy.
Então, este era o princípio subjacente à política exterior dele.
And then he says, for example, well, he has, again, he goes into great detail, and he says, well, he has a section on peace treaties. And he says, well, what is the utility of having a peace treaty with your neighbor? Well, he says that if your country is in a weaker military condition, you should make a treaty of friendship and peace with your neighbor and build up your military forces and then stage a surprise attack. And because then you can convince your neighbor through the peace treaty, which of course you don't believe in, to let down their defenses. So this is also a very modern view. I mean, think of the peace treaty between Nazi Germany and Stalin's Russia, Soviet Union in 1940. It was totally cynical, and they were both preparing to attack one another. But Kautilya had thought of this as a principle of international relations 2,400 years before him.
Bom, este avô de Ashoka considerava o seguinte em relação a tratados de paz. Enquanto você se sentir menos preparado do que o seu vizinho, faça um tratado de paz para que ele ache que você é amigo. Mas enquanto isso você vai se armando militarmente para surpreendê-lo. Coisa bastante comum do século XX, na atitude dos alemães
Temos
e outros países.
o pacto infamo Ribbentrop-Molotov, 1940, entre a Alemanha nazi e a União Soviética. Foi um pacto de paz e amistade totalmente cínico, porque os dois países estavam preparando pela guerra.
Então, efetivamente, quando a Alemanha e Rússia fazem aquele tratado de paz, ele é totalmente cínico porque estavam se preparando para a guerra.
But Kautilya had this, he thought of everything already before. Now,
Ele já tinha pensado, Kautilya, 24 séculos antes, já tinha pensado exatamente da mesma maneira.
Now, Kautilya is of great relevance today because in India he's viewed as one of the great figures, and he's viewed as the founder of Indian diplomacy. And if you go to Delhi today, the main street in the diplomatic quarter, the diplomatic neighborhood, is called Kautilya Marg. Marg means street. So the main street where all the embassies are in New Delhi is called Kautilya Street.
Então, hoje, se você for a Delhi, você vai ver que o nome Kautilya é utilizado na Rua da Diplomacia.
So, as you can see, these two figures, Ashoka and Kautilya, they're paradigmatic or archetypal figures. And
Então, conforme se observa, essas duas figuras, Ashoka e Kautilya, são figuras arquetípicas.
And they are sometimes presented in history as opposites, but in reality, they're complementary because Ashoka inherits this technocratic system of Kautilya, which in some ways is actually quite benevolent because Kautilya is not a gratuitously evil, he's just amoral. Because all of this is for what he thinks is for the realistic good of the state and the people.
Então, veja, eles representam esses dois lados da atitude de ver um Estado, um país, e eles não são efetivamente opostos, eles são complementares, porque a Ashoka herda toda essa estrutura que o avô havia preparado, e ele consegue, então, ter essa situação que lhe favoreceu, ter uma estrutura, e pode, então, trabalhar o seu lado benevolente.
Because the Cotillion system was economically very well managed. There are also some very progressive elements in it. He has provisions of social welfare too. He also says it's important to protect natural resources and have natural reserves for animals and so on.
Então, efetivamente, a Ashoka pegou já o país de certa maneira equilibrado economicamente, ele tinha reservas para tocar, inclusive reservas naturais, reservas econômicas, e, portanto, a Ashoka pôde trabalhar além num ambiente favorável.
But perhaps to see the critical difference in them, you can see it in the area of nature protection, because Kautilya says it's important to set aside nature reserves, protect forests, protect animals, for utilitarian purposes, for the economic and material benefit of the state. So that is the reason, not because it's an ethically or morally good thing to do, no, because you need to protect forests and protect animals for the material security of the state. And he gives the example of elephants. Elephants are very important in warfare, but they require very big forest areas. So Kautilya says we have to have very big forest areas set aside for elephants and protect these areas, because elephants are essential for the security of the state.
Enquanto ambos protegiam a natureza, a atitude da proteção era totalmente diferente. Kautilya pensava na proteção dos animais como um elemento utilitário, principalmente os grandes elefantes que poderiam ser usados em guerras e tudo mais. Enquanto que a Ashoka tinha a proteção como uma atitude universalista, nunca por motivos utilitários.
And we remember that Ashoka said that especially totally useless animals, they should be totally protected. Yeah?
Lembrando então que a Ashoka falava que os animais totalmente inúteis têm que ser totalmente protegidos.
So you can probably recognize in Kautilya really a very modern sort of person. Amartya Sen has written some things about Kautilya and Ashoka. He says Kautilya is really has the mentality of most modern economists have the mentality of Kautilya, because they believe in material incentives, and they believe naturally that the fundamental principle of society is the production and management of material wealth, and based on utilitarian grounds. So he said that Kautilya Sen has written, he said, well, Kautilya really was the first person in a surprisingly sophisticated way, in a revolutionary way, to articulate these principles.
Então, hoje se reconhece que essa atitude é vastamente usada na produção de bens materiais e na atuação junto à natureza com a função utilitária, e que ele fez naquela ocasião de uma forma bem articulada.
O que é importante é que os economistas modernos têm esta mentalidade, esta visão utilitária da Kautilya. And modern economics is basically based on a utilitarian view of human nature, and organizing society along the the main goal of the production of material wealth with a utilitarian logic.
Portanto, a atitude de Kautilya foi a atitude que mais predominantemente influencia os economistas atuais. Eles têm essa visão da produção e da atitude de utilidade, de tudo a serviço dessa produção.
So this brings us to the current day, which is sort of the conclusion of my talk, because
Isso nos traz aos dias de hoje. E a conclusão então chega.
yeah, because you can see that today we live in a Kautilyan world more than ever.
Vocês podem observar que mais do que nunca nós vivemos no mundo de Kautilya, mais do que naquela
But that
época.
we desperately need an Ashokan ethic too.
Mas nós desesperadamente precisamos da ética de Ashoka.
And returning to some of the leading thinkers and critics of globalization today,
Voltando então às pessoas que estão vivas e estão falando da globalização atualmente,
people, for example, like Hans Kung and so on,
pessoas como Hans Kung e outros,
they cite, I've noticed that in their writings they tend to cite certain thinkers, but one of the, perhaps the most important one is, believe it or not, Adam Smith.
então um dos mais importantes, você quer crer ou não, é Adam Smith.
And of course, Adam Smith and Amartya Sen there's been a rediscovery of Adam Smith, but in, I would say, the past 10 or 15 years. But you could say of the real Adam Smith.
Mas vamos falar do real Adam Smith, não de como ele foi redescoberto.
Because Adam Smith and one of the two books he wrote, The Wealth of Nations, he has been cited by, I think, neoliberal economists and conservatives as standing for the principle that society should be organized along the principles of markets and free trade.
Então, Adam Smith, no seu livro da Riqueza das Nações, enfatiza todo este lado, né, da produção.
Well, he's been misinterpreted as saying that. Now, Adam Smith was in favor of mercado libre, free trade. But,
Ele era muito a favor, Adam Smith coloca uma visão a favor do mercado livre.
yeah. But in The Wealth of Nations, he was taking a special case because he believed that within limits you needed this. But he wrote another book, which is a book of philosophy. It's called The Theory of Moral Sentiments.
Então, além deste livro, que é A Riqueza das Nações, ele também escreveu um livro com base filosófica,
Yeah.
The Theory of,
Moral Sentiments. Sentimental moral.
que é a teoria dos sentimentos morais.
And of course, we should remember that Adam Smith was not an economist. He was a professor of moral philosophy at the University of Edinburgh.
Então, temos que lembrar que Adam Smith não era um professor de economia, mas um professor de
Filosofia moral.
filosofia moral.
And the term economist in the 18th century did not exist. And in the theory of moral sentiments, Smith, a bit like Kautilya, he tries to identify what are the fundamental principles which support society, without which society will disintegrate.
Então, ele também, muito como Kautilya, tentou identificar quais são os elementos estruturais da sociedade, sem os quais a sociedade se desintegraria.
And he says there are three.
E disse que há três elementos.
He says one is justice,
É justiça,
the second is beneficence or benevolence,
o segundo é benevolência,
and the third is what he calls prudence.
e o terceiro é o que ele chama de prudência.
And he says that, of course, benevolence, for example, is taking care of the poor, charity, and so on.
Benevolência obviamente, caridade, cuidar dos pobres, coisas assim.
And he says that prudence is the individual and collective ability to foresee the long-term consequences of actions and then to act according to those long-term consequences, which is to say, not to act according to short-term benefit, but to see the long-term, and both as an individual and as a whole society, to have the ability to act for the long-term, not the short-term.
Então, prudência, ele coloca como habilidade de poder prever as consequências dos seus atos em longo prazo. Não apenas o benefício no curto prazo, mas ter a consciência do que essa sua ação pode fazer a longo prazo.
And then he says justice is basically protecting the weak against the strong.
E justiça, ele diz que é basicamente proteger os fracos contra os fortes.
And he says, it's a very strong quote, he says, well, a society can live with not much benevolence, it will be kind of an ugly place, and it can even exist for some time without prudence, it can be, but if you don't have justice, all of society disintegrates into conflict and into atoms. Society, justice is the most important. Without justice, society disintegrates.
Então, avaliando os três elementos, retirando os possíveis, ele pensou, bom, a sociedade até vive sem benevolência, ela fica feia, mas vive, até poderia viver sem prudência, sem pensar nas consequências a longo prazo, mas precisaria da justiça.
Well, no, a society can live for some time without benevolence and without prudence. But if there is no justice, it disintegrates very quickly.
Então, você pode deixar por um tempo a benevolência, a prudência, mas não pode deixar a justiça, porque senão ela desintegra.
So, what is interesting in these debates about globalization is that this other Adam Smith of the theory has been rediscovered, and that as a critic of neoliberalism and of this market fundamentalism which dominates our world. And Amartya Sen has cited him, and Hans Kung, and many other thinkers. So there's been a revival of interest in what you could call the real Adam Smith. And I think one can conclude that what Ashoka was trying to do, and Adam Smith, by the way, he was not against markets and trade. He was just saying that markets and economic activity has to be embedded in a system of social values, of justice, prudence, and benevolence. And in a way you can say that Ashoka, already in the 3rd century BC, was trying with his dharma, his ethical principles and so on, was trying to create a system of justice and prudence and benevolence to hold together what was a multi-ethnic, multicultural, very diverse society.
Então, Adam Smith, quando coloca essa sua visão de que não é contra o mercado, mas que ele tem que ser tecido como estruturador de uma sociedade, juntamente com a benevolência e a prudência, e volta-se, e na época de Ashoka, e coloca-se toda essa possibilidade da visão ética, humana. Então, hoje, isso tudo está sendo novamente chamado nesse mundo globalizado.
So I think, one can go back, for example, to Hans Kung, in discussing a global ethic, he says, well, today we have a global, an ethic of of individual success and economic competition. And what we need to do, what we need to have is to have an ethic of global responsibility and of global care.
Ok. Então, Hans Kung atualmente fala da ética existente como muito mais uma ética individual da competição. E que o que é necessário é que a gente tenha uma ética global, não apenas aquela de eu cuido do meu, né?
And recently the former president of Czechoslovakia, Václav Havel, died, and he was also a great intellectual and a great thinker, and he also thought a lot about these questions, and he came to a very similar conclusion. He said that
Agora ele vai fazer uma citação do representante da Tchecoslováquia que pensou bastante em toda essa questão e chegou a uma conclusão.
Yeah, Václav Havel, very famous, a great thinker, playwright, and he died recently. It was in the newspaper, and he said, well, the problem with the world today is that we need a non-material order above us and also among us that can somehow be the foundation for our individual and collective life.
Então ele considera que nós não precisamos